The sun was already high when the guests began whispering, but its warmth could do nothing for the cold silence spreading across the courtyard. On what should have been the happiest day of her life, Marina Solis sat in her wheelchair beneath a cascade of white lilies, facing the empty aisle where her groom had vanished minutes earlier, the world around her blurred as shock pressed against her chest. She could still hear his final words echoing in her mind. "I can't do this. I can't marry someone who will only hold me back." Her fingers trembled against the soft bouquet she had spent months choosing. The crowd watched with pity, the kind that hurt more than the abandonment itself. And in that moment, under the bright daylight she once thought would illuminate a new beginning, Marina felt like the sun itself had turned its back on her. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul of Light. It helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Marina had been paralyzed from the waist down for 3 years after a car accident that changed everything she once believed about her future. Before the crash, she had been a vibrant physical therapist, known in her small town for the way she brought hope to others. But in a single moment, she had become the one who needed lifting. Her fiancé, Taryn, had promised he'd stay no matter what, but promises sometimes crack under the weight of reality. Their wedding had been postponed twice already, each time because he needed more time. Marina thought today, finally standing, or rather sitting, before him in her wedding dress, that he had chosen love over fear. But fear won. As the guests dispersed awkwardly, pretending to have emergencies or car troubles, Marina was left with only the soft rustle of the wind and the guilt of existing in a body that the world judged as fragile. She wasn't weak, she knew that, but heartbreak had a way of unraveling even the strongest threads of confidence. Her sister, Ronella, tried to console her, but Marina insisted she didn't want anyone's pity. What she wanted, she knew she could no longer have, a life where she wasn't seen as half of her former self. Her town was small enough that news traveled fast. By sundown, almost everyone knew she had been left at the altar. Some said Taryn was heartless. Others said they understood. It's a lot for a young man. But none of the whispers mattered. What mattered was the silence in her small home that night, thick and suffocating, pressing down on her until she felt her chest might collapse. She didn't cry loudly, she never had. Her tears came in soft waves, rolling quietly down her cheeks as the fading daylight washed over her room. She stared out the window, wondering if this was all her life would be from now on, people leaving, opportunities shrinking, dreams dissolving. A week passed, then 2. Marina forced herself into routines so she wouldn't drown in the emptiness. She returned to her small volunteer position at the community library, sorting children's books and helping with reading sessions. That was where her life took a turn, small at first, like a whisper of change barely noticeable against the weight of her grief. One late morning, while she was organizing books for a summer reading event, she noticed a little boy struggling to reach a storybook from the highest shelf. Before she could call out, he lost his balance and fell, tumbling backward with a thud and a startled gasp. Marina wheeled quickly toward him, terrified he was hurt. But before she reached him, a tall man rushed in from the other aisle, scooping the child into his arms with a mixture of fear and relief etched across his face. His name was Sion Harville, a single father who looked a little worn around the edges, as if life had handed him more than he'd bargained for. He apologized repeatedly to Marina for the commotion, but she simply smiled and offered reassurance. She had seen enough injuries in her life to know the boy was fine, just startled. The child clung to his father's shirt, still teary, and Sion thanked Marina with a sincerity that struck her more deeply than she expected. Most people avoided making eye contact with her, as if her wheelchair made them uncomfortable, but Sion looked directly at her, not at the chair, not at her legs, at her. Over the next few weeks, Sion and his son, Jairo, became regulars at the library. Jairo adored the picture books Marina selected for him, and Sion often stayed to help arrange reading materials or carry boxes she couldn't lift. He never treated her as broken or helpless. He simply saw her as someone trying, living, showing up despite everything life had taken. And slowly, sunlight began to seep back into Marina's days, not the harsh, exposing kind that had witnessed her worst moment, but a warm, gentle glow that settled quietly into her heart. Yet healing wasn't immediate. Marina still had moments, especially on bright afternoons, when the memory of her abandoned wedding resurfaced like a bruise touched too soon. She avoided social gatherings and stopped checking her messages altogether. But Sion noticed. One afternoon, after helping set up decorations for a children's story hour, he lingered beside her as she arranged colorful markers on the table. Without asking intrusive questions, he shared a little of his own past, how his wife had died during childbirth, leaving him terrified and alone with a newborn, how he didn't think he'd ever be enough for his son, how fear had almost convinced him to give up more than once. His vulnerability cracked something open in Marina. She realized she wasn't the only one who had felt abandoned by life. Pain didn't discriminate, it visited everyone. Some people just hid it better than others. As days turned into weeks, their connection deepened. They didn't need grand confessions or dramatic gestures. Their bond grew in quiet moments, pushing chairs together during events, sharing lunch on the library terrace beneath the late morning sun, watching Gyro chase butterflies in the yard. Marina found herself laughing more genuinely than she had in years. Sion, who once lived in constant fear of failing his son, felt himself standing taller whenever Marina was near. She believed in him, something he hadn't felt from anyone in a long time. But life has a way of testing new hope. One afternoon, Marina's former fiancé, Taryn, walked into the library unexpectedly. He had returned from a trip out of town and claimed he wanted to apologize publicly after hearing how the town had reacted. His voice was smooth, rehearsed, and distant. The sight of him standing among the stacks of books made Marina's stomach twist, not in longing, but in a sharp awareness of everything she had survived. Taryn kept insisting that he wanted to talk privately, hinting that he regretted how things ended. Before Marina could respond, Sion stepped protectively beside her. Not controlling, not possessive, steadfast, as if offering her a shield she didn't know she still needed. Taryn's expression tightened at the sight. In that moment, Marina realized something important. She no longer felt small. She no longer felt unwanted or fragile. She felt seen, worthy, and strong. And it wasn't because Sion stood beside her. It was because she finally understood she deserved someone who wouldn't run at the first sign of difficulty. She looked Taryn in the eyes, steadied her breath, and told him calmly that she no longer needed his apology to move forward. His presence no longer had power over her. Taryn left in a huff, muttering excuses under his breath, but Marina barely noticed. She felt a clarity she hadn't felt in years. Their days continued to unfold with a gentle warmth. Sion invited Marina to join him and Gyro at the park on bright afternoons, where she would watch Gyro push toy cars through the sand, while Sion sketched scenery in a worn notebook he never let anyone see. One day, after Gyro ran off chasing birds, Sion finally showed her the sketches. To her shock, many of them were of her silhouette, wet in the library window, her smile as she read to children, her profile under the dappled light of tree branches. He had drawn her not as someone broken, but as someone radiant. It was the first time Marina cried in sunlight tears not of grief, but of gratitude. Their relationship blossomed naturally from that day forward, anchored by mutual respect and the understanding that love is not built on perfection, but on presence. Marina found herself inspiring Sion to pursue opportunities he had long shelved, and Sion encouraged her to embrace life without apology. Together, they created a space where healing felt possible. As they grew closer, the town slowly rewrote its story of Marina, not as the abandoned bride, but as the woman who rose again. People admired her courage, They admired Sion's devotion as a father and his tenderness as a partner. And on a bright day months later, as the town gathered for a library celebration, Sion knelt beside her, not in some grand proposal, but simply to take her hand, showing the world what love looked like when it was patient, loyal, and brave enough to choose someone fully. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul of Light. Your support helps us continue spreading warmth, kindness, and hope. Special request: comment below with one moment in your life when kindness changed everything. And under the bright, forgiving daylight, Mariner realized life had not taken her future away. It had simply rewritten it into something stronger, softer, and infinitely more beautiful.